when a lonely, elderly woman in a quiet village in the kitten region took in a strange stray kitten, no one paid much attention. Months passed, and people began to notice that something was off about the animal. It was growing too fast and looked unusual. One night, the village's silence was shattered by terrifying screams coming from the old woman's house. When neighbors rushed to the noise, they froze in shock at the sight before their eyes. No one could believe what was happening. In a small village in the kitten region lived an elderly woman whom everyone simply called Grandma. Her house, surrounded by a low wooden fence, blended in with the others, but behind this ordinary facade lay an extraordinary world filled with purrs and meows. The grandma was known for her love of cats. She had neither husband nor children, and she devoted all her attention and care to her four-legged pets. Each cat in her house had its own story. She brought one from the city, found another on the street, and rescued a third from cruel children. But her latest pet was special, although at first no one, including the grandma herself, suspected just how special. The story began one autumn day when the grandma was returning from a friend's house in the big city. With a heavy bag full of groceries unavailable in their village, she hurried to the train station. Suddenly, her attention was drawn to a young cat that, catching the scent of food, started following her. The hungry animal kept pace, meowing pitifully and looking into her eyes. The grandma's heart melted. She couldn't leave the poor creature to its fate. Taking out a piece of sausage from her bag, she fed the cat, but even after that, it continued to follow her as if understanding it had found its home. So instead of just groceries, the grandma brought a new resident to the village. At first, the new pet seemed like an ordinary young cat, albeit a bit wild. It was distrustful of people except for the grandma and preferred to stay in the shadows. But soon it became obvious that this cat was different from the others. It grew faster than regular domestic cats and soon became noticeably larger than its feline housemates. Neighbors, noticing the unusual pet, suggested that the grandma had accidentally picked up a Maine Coon kitten, one of the largest domestic cat breeds. The grandma was happy with this turn of events, as she had never owned purebred cats before. She named the new pet Vasily, or simply Vasya, unaware that this name was completely unsuitable for its true nature. Months passed, and Vasya continued to grow and change. His fur became thicker and took on an unusual color. His ears seemed smaller than those of ordinary cats, and his eyes glowed with a wild fire. The grandma attributed these peculiarities to his breed, but neighbors began to whisper that something wasn't right with this cat. The other cats in the house were initially wary of Vasya. He was too large and wild for them, but gradually they got used to his presence, though they continued to keep their distance. Vasya, for his part, seemed to pay little attention to them, preferring to spend time alone or near the grandma. Autumn in those parts is an uneasy time. With the onset of cold weather, unwelcome guests would visit the village. Scrap metal hunters. These people would wait for summer residents to leave for the cities, and at night they would break into empty houses, stealing aluminum cookware and other valuables. They usually left the local residents alone, fearing resistance. But on that fateful night, everything changed. The grandma's neighbor's adult son, who had long been unemployed and survived on odd jobs, came to visit. Learning that the lonely old woman with cats was supposed to leave for the city to visit a friend, he persuaded two local residents to rob her house. They didn't know that due to a sudden spike in blood pressure, the grandma had stayed home. Deep in the night, when the village was fast asleep, 3 intruders entered the house through a window. They split up. One went to the kitchen, another to the living room, and the third to the bedroom. Their careless steps woke the grandma who, seeing a stranger in her room, screamed in fear. At that moment, something incredible happened. A huge shadow darted across the room and pounced on the robber. Vasya, who had always seemed so calm and even lazy, transformed into a real wild beast. His claws and teeth sank into the intruder's face, making him scream in pain and horror. The other robbers ran in upon hearing the screams. Seeing new opponents, Vasya momentarily loosened his grip, which the first attacker used to escape. But the cat didn't lose his composure. With lightning speed, he leapt at the second robber and latched onto his legs, tearing through the thick denim fabric and leaving deep wounds. Panic seized the intruders. They hadn't expected to encounter such fierce resistance, especially from a domestic animal. Dropping their burglary tools, all three rushed out in terror, leaving a trail of blood drops behind them. The grandma, still trembling with fear, couldn't believe what had happened. Her Vasya, who had seemed so gentle and calm, had proven himself a true protector. She hugged the cat, feeling his heart beating in unison with her own. In the morning, news of the night's incident spread throughout the village. Neighbors, having heard the screams and commotion, had called the police. The criminals were quickly found. They were betrayed not only by the grandma's testimony and neighbors who had noticed suspicious men, but also by the distinctive wounds left by the cat. During the investigation, an unexpected fact came to light. The veterinarian examining Vasya after the incident was surprised to discover that he wasn't a domestic cat at all, nor even a Maine Coon. Vasya turned out to be a wild Pallas's cat, a rare species of steppe cat that usually avoids humans and is practically impossible to domesticate. This news shocked everyone, especially the grandma. How did a wild Pallas's cat end up in the city? How had she managed to tame it when even experienced zoologists consider this task nearly impossible? These questions remained unanswered, but one thing was clear. A special bond had formed between the grandma and Vasya, overcoming the boundaries between the wild and domestic worlds. The story of the grandma and Vasya, the Pallas's cat, quickly spread beyond the village. Journalists and researchers came to see the unusual pair with their own eyes. Many didn't believe that a wild animal could live in a house like an ordinary pet, but Vasya repeatedly proved that his devotion to the grandma was no myth. For the locals, Vasya became a symbol of protection and loyalty. Children, who had previously feared the large and unusual cat, now watched him from afar with admiration. Adults began to treat the grandma with even greater respect, understanding that her kindness and care had managed to tame even a wild beast. Years passed, but Vasya remained the grandma's faithful companion. He was still wary of strangers, but showed remarkable tenderness towards her. Every evening he would settle down next to her armchair as if guarding her sleep, and in the mornings he would meet her at the doorstep when she went out to feed the other cats. This story became a legend passed down by word of mouth. It reminds us that sometimes the most unexpected encounter can change a life, and true kindness will always find a response, even if it comes from the most unexpected source. In a small village in the ktten region, wild nature and human kindness merged into one, creating a union that seemed impossible to many, but which proved that love and devotion know no boundaries.